So, test. Wow. Okay. So at no point. Oh, comms, please. Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to talk into this.
I just got you guys like nice leather ones too.
Didn't seem bad to me. Seems good.
I don't think you'll need the panel antennas as
I'm going to lose my shit if it doesn't hold.
I mean,
No. No, it's fine. I'm just going to lose my shit if it goes bad.
Well, it works.
Testing for the TV station. Testing. 1, 2, 3. TV station, testing audio. Testing audio for the TV station.
XLR, and it's actually 6.
I'm gonna be doing photos again for this, but this one right here.
That's our wide. Those are our main 2 cameras. So those are the ones that are going to do all the work. Yeah. So those are the only 2 I would say keep an eye that are not blocking it. This one's just a cutaway.
Right, so that's okay. So kind of just try not to go past that, or what's...
They're getting close up. 2 and 3 right there on the screens. It's getting real tight. So it's more about just not blocking the flat.
So mainly the sides.
Yeah. 6, and then plug it into program.
Are these the bikes for the event?
Yes.
Okay.
They are.
Can we grab them all?
Go for it, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Looks like they are, though.
Yeah, you're good to
Is
say.
there a mic stand up there?
Well, let's go find out.
We can get your mic stand.
Oh, that'd be great. to turn them on and off? Do we do anything?
Yeah, but you can just go ahead and leave them.
They're all on.
Yeah. They'll,
Okay, so I'll just set them on the tables. That's okay. All right. You want to? And then, are you gonna pass this to Sophie?
Yes,
What you've been doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just set it on.
Okay. Yep.
only just put my clip.
And then those two go.
Okay. Can this go over there?
Oh, yeah. Then we won't.
I was gonna
share over
I
here.
need to do two, I need to do two there, one here, and one there.
Okay.
Let me grab you a clip.
One over. All right.
I'll grab the clip.
Is that?
I don't care which is which. I just
So
need
that-
two mics here and one mic on the table.
Okay. The other mic will go there. Go here. And then one will be at the. Oh, I see.
It looks like they're gonna start fast, so just be ready to roll.
That one will be over there. They're numbered, so. Yeah. I'm gonna put that one over here. So one's on this side.
Sorry about the chaos on that. There's some Wi-Fi issues today. Yes. Move it down. Yeah, actually, I have a tabletop if you want the mic to just come out of the podium.
Actually, I like this because I don't have papers. I've shoved it in there.
Perfect.
It'd be great if I could just get it out of the room.
Yeah. It does got to be a little close to the mouth, but real tight. Yeah, there it
I
is.
can adjust it.
important to our local community and across the state. To support our mission, or even better, to participate in planning City Club programs and engaging in research, become a member. You can do that by going to our website, pdxcityclub.org/membership, and there you can indicate how you'd like to engage in those activities. And I have a deal for you. If you join tonight, you can get $40 off your membership, and use this code. When you go to that join button, put in new, all capitals, NEW 40. Now, many people are responsible for developing tonight's program. I want to give a special thanks to Bobby Reagan and Robin Denberg, who are City Club governors and co-producing this program tonight, along with Sam Metz of our program committee. And a special thank you to City Club's programming communication director, Kayla Kennett, for her hard work in bringing the details of this program together. We want to thank our series sponsor, The Standard, and our season sponsors, AARP Oregon and Fight Against Sex Trafficking, for their important support. And you're welcome to give them a hand. We also have community sponsors, KGW News, X-Ray FM, and District 3 Coalition Southeast Uplift are all helpful to our program and help us reach new audiences. Now, mark your calendars for a couple of important upcoming events. The final Meet Your Counselor event will take place next Tuesday, March 4th at 6 p.m. It'll be at the Immigration and Refugee Community Organization, or IRCO, Socom Touch Center. So please go to the City Club website where you can sign up and get free tickets. On March 7th, we'll launch a new series of public forums and work sessions to address the livability challenges in downtown and inner east side of Portland that we call a prescription for central city livability. This exciting program series will focus on reimagining downtown as a revitalized business district and a vibrant, sustainable neighborhoods. We think of downtown as every neighborhood's second neighborhood. So even though you live out here, it's something that's important to all Portlanders. So the first program on March 7th is at noon at the University Place Hotel. All programs are free with registration, but lunch is available for purchase. You may see a complete list of our upcoming programs on our website. Now to tonight's program. With the adoption of Portland's city charter changes, Portland moved Portland away from its long-time form of government. Using a new ranked choice voting system, Portland voters elected 12 city councilors in November, with 3 councilors elected to represent each of 4 new city districts. These city councilors were sworn into office only a month ago, so give them a little bit of slack. Tonight's program features city councilors from Portland's District 3, which covers most of Portland's neighborhoods west of Interstate 205 and south of Sandy Boulevard. There are some exceptions, excluding Reed, Sellwood, Eastmoreland, Ardenwald, Johnson neighborhoods, and including a sliver of Northeast Portland. One person. This district includes popular features like Laurelhurst and Mount Tabor parks, many neighborhood business districts, and several community centers, including the Rose City Golf Course. District 3 is the second wealthiest district behind West Side's District 4. The district's median income is $84,000, but 11% of the residents live below the poverty line. This district is racially diverse, and more racially diverse than the city's overall population. According to the 2020 U.S. Census, 75% of District 3 residents were white, 9% identified as Latino, 9% identified as Asian, and 4% identified as black. And interestingly, the district had the most candidates for this office, 30 of them, and typically has the highest voter turnout of any district. So it's no surprise that we filled this place. Our new District 3 councilors, let me introduce them. First, Tiffany Koyama Lane. Angelita Morillo. And Steve Novick. Each will tell us a little bit about themselves and in their opening remarks. And we're excited to hear their hopes and dreams and plans for this district, but also for the city in general. And we really are pleased to have all of you here tonight. Our moderator tonight, and for each of our 4 Meet the Counselor programs, is Sophie Peel, my left. In addition to being a skilled moderator, Sophie has been a Willamette Week City Hall reporter since 2021. She covered the state politics, including reporting in 2023 that led to the resignation of Oregon's Secretary of State. And she previously worked for NPR in Georgia. Okay. Hear, hear. Now, some of you submitted questions at the time of your registration, and thank you for doing that. Sophie has incorporated many of your themes into her own questions tonight. At the end of our program, we'll also have a short live audience question opportunity. So as I wrap up this introduction, I invite you to stay after the program for an opportunity informally to meet your counselor and also to meet City Club members who are here and be happy to talk with you about what we've been doing and what opportunities you might have. Now, please join me in welcoming the new District 3 City Councilors. And Sophie, I'm turning it over to you.
Thanks, John, and thanks to the City Club of Portland. Like he said, this is our 3rd of 4 events, and I think this is by far the coolest space, so you guys win for that one. Run of show tonight, just a little heads up, we've got 20 minutes of District 3 based questions, then about 20 minutes of citywide questions, and then about 10 minutes of live audience questions. Like John said, 2 of the 3 counselors are going to hang out after. Counselor Koyama Lane is not feeling so well. She still showed up, which is great. So kudos to her. But she is going to head out after just this portion, so she will not be hanging out after to answer questions because she probably needs to rest. I think they all need to rest, but she probably needs to rest the most right now. So we're going to start out. I'm just going to ask each of you to take 1 or 2 minutes to introduce yourselves, tell us a bit about yourself, and not necessarily why you ran for office, but what you think you bring to the city council that maybe no one else brings. Councilor Morillo, let's start with you.
Hi, everyone. Oh, I turned it off somehow. Is this testing? Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, everyone. So good to see you. My name's Angelita Morillo, or Angelita Morillo, for those of you that speak Spanish. Thanks so much for having me and for coming out tonight. This is part of why I love District 3 so much. We do turn out. My family is originally from Paraguay. I moved to the United States from South America when I was just 4 years old, and I really love Portland. Ever since I've had an opportunity to choose where I live as an adult, I've always chosen this place. I just think it's a very special city, and I think that's part of why we're being targeted by the federal government, if I can name the elephant in the room immediately. I think that we're a city of fighters. I think we're a city that cares about people who have the least among us, and I just truly believe in this place and love it very much. I come from doing anti-hunger policy work. That's what I did before being elected to City Hall. I actually worked for Partners for a Hunger-Free Oregon, which is pretty close. It's on 30th and Stark. And I was helping pass anti-hunger policy at the state legislature. I also previously worked for Commissioner Joanne Hardesty doing constituent services and tribal relations policy. So I've really just loved getting to work with constituents, and it meant a lot to me to treat that as almost a community organizing gig and start talking to people. And it was really something that I realized is that a lot of people don't know how to access City Hall, partially because we make it so difficult to access. And so I created a social media account to educate people on local government and politics so that they could get engaged. And I ended up creating a TikTok account that got 36,000 local followers now, where I've engaged young people on how to access their local government. So part of the thing that I think that I bring that none of my other colleagues do is, for one, a different identity. I'm a Paraguayan immigrant. I'm the only immigrant on city council. I'm the youngest person on city council at 28 years old. I know how to engage with a different generation that historically has been ignored or left out of politics. And I also think I have the courage to meet the political moment that we're in. Thanks.
Thank you. Now mine's, there we go. Councilor Novick.
Is this on?
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Steve Novick. I'm not quite the oldest person on City Council, but I'm pretty darn close. I grew up in Lane County in Cottage Grove and basically never visited, thank you. Basically never visited Portland when I was growing up. My first real exposure to Portland was when I was working for the Federal Justice Department in DC, and I sued the Port of Portland for Clean Water Act violations. So I came out here on that case, and the EPA lawyer from Seattle that was working with me used to live here, so she took me on sort of a tour, and I was like, this is a really nice city. Maybe I should move back to Oregon. So a few years later, I did that. In terms of what I bring to the council, one thing is, and I forgot to mention, I was an environmental lawyer then. I was also an environmental lawyer for the state over the last 6 years, mostly fighting things the Trump administration was doing at first and then supporting things the Biden administration was doing the past few years. And if I still had that job, then I would be spending every minute of my life thinking about the Trump administration. And I'm so glad that now I can spend some of it worrying about a $100 million budget deficit instead. In terms of something I bring to the council, one thing I bring is a passion to let people know where their tax dollars go and what the kind of choices are that governments face. And right now, we are facing this $100 million deficit. And I want to be sure that we let people know that the city spends the vast majority of its discretionary money on police, fire, parks, and more recently, homeless and housing services. So when people hear about cuts we're contemplating, it's going to be in those things. So I'm going to want to get people to understand that and help us navigate through those choices, understanding what the choices are.
Thank you. And Councilor Koyama Lane.
Hey, District 3, how you doing? I'm teacher Tiffany, or Councilor Koyama Lane, Tiffany Koyama Lane, Madam Vice President. People are calling me all different things these days. I'll respond to any of those. I have been a public school teacher for the last 16 years. I'm also a mom to 2 kids, to a 7-year-old and 9-year-old. I live in the Sunnyside neighborhood, bike with my kids to Richmond Elementary. When we first got here, I was thinking about just how much I love this district and how many memories I have in this actual building. I remember doing music together in the back rooms. I have been to concerts with my kids here, with Mo Phillips up here, and was thinking about how a group of Japanese American elders came together and threw a big fundraiser for me last summer in the basement here. So I care a lot about our district. I am a organizer. As I knocked on many of your doors in the past year, I talked about my vision was seeing this position as a city councilor really as a community organizer, so someone who's keeping a pulse on what are the constituents saying, who's feeling boxed out, how can people really feel like they're heard. I'm spending a lot of time trying to bring that energy with me into City Hall. Everyone who's written me a handwritten letter, I have written you a handwritten one back. So if you sent one, there should be one coming to you back for me in the mail. I think, a piece is like bringing my perspective as a mom. What does it feel like to be raising kids in District 3? I have that lived experience. Also, I'm the first Asian American woman to ever serve on Portland City Council, which is exciting, and hopefully there will be more to come. And so I think that mom experience and bringing my identity, and also having this community organizer lens.
Great, thank you. So before we launch into kind of more specific District 3 questions, I'd like to ask each of you just to take 1 minute, if you could, or shorter, which is even better, to talk about a very specific issue to District 3 that you would like to address during your term, whether that's like a particular intersection that is particularly dangerous or a park that is not doing well. What's a very hyper-local place in District 3 that you want to see improvements? Whoever can think of it first can go first.
I mentioned I live in the Sunnyside neighborhood. I'm just a couple blocks from where Jeannie Diaz was killed sitting at the bus stop. She's someone who my kids knew. She checked out books to them. She was a youth librarian at the Belmont Library. So making sure that we are really thinking about ways that we can all move through our neighborhood without the fear of traffic violence. So making sure that I'm leaning on people that know a lot about this. I had a conversation with about 6 representatives today from PBOT, just talking about some of the work that they're doing, ways that I can be supportive, and specifically thinking around some of our schools. Especially, I saw some folks from Bike Bus here. There are some schools that have a lot of momentum already, and so talking to them about how can we harness some of that and get community members helping in some of these different education programs. So what they said is sometimes folks will feel like PBOT does projects and the projects are done to them rather than feeling involved. And so I'm like, I can help with that. I have like the list of every PTA president in our district, and I know the union reps. Like some of this is, I can bring that organizer lens and help. How powerful would it be to have kids involved with doing some work to make sure that they feel safer right around their schools?
Great, thank you. Councilor Novick.
Well, I'll bring up a really hyper-local thing. Somebody emailed to me about a few days ago. I got an email from someone who lives at 44th and Stark, who said that people speed down Stark like bats out of hell. And she was asking if it's possible we could do something like put a speed camera in her neighborhood, which do have a track record of slowing people down. Now, it's kind of tricky being on the council. The administration deals with, day-to-day stuff. The council's supposed to do policy, and I want to respect that, but at least I can ask, what are the criteria for putting in speed cameras? Is that stretch of Stark on your radar? What would have to happen for it to be in your radar? So that's exactly the kind of hyper-local thing that I think that people will benefit from having district councilors who do represent districts and have the time to respond to questions like that.
Thank you. Councilor Morillo.
Thanks, great question. I think there's a lot of transportation things that we can do in the district. As you've already heard, we have a lot of gravel streets. I'm thinking about, I believe it's like Southeast Holgate or Flavel, and there are different areas that we want to improve, but of course, I'm sure we're going to talk about the horrific budget that we're seeing this year as well. But to talk about something non-transportation related, I would say that we have a district that's pretty dense with young people who tend to be renters, and I'm bringing forward an ordinance to try to ban algorithmic software devices from, okay, you've heard of it, good. To stop landlords from price fixing through the use of AI software. So we have a housing affordability crisis across the city. It definitely impacts District 3, and it's just one tiny piece of chipping away at that. Thank you.
You guys' clapping is going to take up a lot of time, but keep doing it. It's nice. It's very supportive. So District 3 has the city's first temporary alternative shelter site. I think I got that acronym right. It's a tiny pod shelter, and I believe it has over 100 pods at this point. It was a little bit controversial when it was first getting set up a couple years ago. I think it was 22, 23. But now I think there's quite a bit of support from city leaders on that. I'm curious if each of you, and if only one or two of you want to take this question, that's totally fine. I'm curious if, as you've seen that pod shelter sort of evolve over the years, if you believe it's a model that is working and that should be replicated, or if the city should not replicate that and look elsewhere. Councilor Morillo, let's start with you.
Yeah. Testing? Okay, sorry. Sorry, I'm going to get used to it by the end of this, I promise. I think that it's a good shelter model insofar as a lot of unhoused people that I talked to, especially when I did anti-hunger policy work, really wanted a place where they could close their door. Having that private access is really important. I also think it has deviated a bit from the original outdoor shelters that were originally created by Commissioner Joanne Hardesty. The original intent of those spaces was not just to replicate the indoor shelter model in an outdoor space. It was actually to create autonomous shelters that were guided by a council of unhoused people that lived within it, because then they can make decisions together, have more ownership of the community space that they hold, and that creates just a different dynamic with how you, as an unhoused person, engage with the community and so on. So I think that there are good things and things I would like to see changed. And I also think that we have to think very, very critically about when we're expanding shelter, where are we expanding the services to get people connected into long-term housing? Because if we don't include that step in a lot of what we're doing, we're going to hide homelessness, in these shelter spaces, but we're not necessarily going to resolve the issue, which is making sure that people are permanently housed.
Just a little bit of context. Urban Alchemy is the contractor that runs that shelter. They're an out-of-state company. And I was trying to think of an adjective to kind of best describe their style, and this is not the right one, but it's the best one I could think of. They're a little bit more militant than maybe some other contractors are that do oversee these shelters. Again, wrong word. I hope I don't get in trouble for that. But that's sort of where a bit of the rub was, is that I think there were a lot of people that were concerned that the way they ran shelters in other cities and states was just a little bit harsher than maybe Portland would want. Sure.
I'd actually like to respond to that, because I think the main issue with Urban Alchemy at first was that they were started in San Francisco. I haven't heard horrific reports from Portland, but I do want to add the context that part of the reason community advocates were really concerned about them was that there is a lawsuit going on with Urban Alchemy from San Francisco because of abuse that staff had potentially done to unhoused people within that shelter space. So it's not just that they were tough love, trying to get people off drugs or whatever, and having more harsh reinforcement for that. It was that they were looking into potential violations. So I just want to add that context for why advocates were concerned originally.
Councilor Novick, it looked like you had some thoughts.
Yeah, I just wanted to, Sophie told us she really only wants one of us to answer each question, but I couldn't resist throwing this nugget in, which is a couple of weeks ago, we were on sort of a tour of the task sites, and there was an outreach worker who told us that when he offers shelter in a congregate shelter to people in the street, 20% of the time they say yes. When he offers a space in one of the tiny house villages, 90% of the time they say yes. So that in itself I think is a pretty good reason to keep seeing if we can expand this model.
Great, thank you. Counselor, can I ask you the next question? Great. So there's a lot of focus on downtown and whether we're in a quote-unquote doom loop. There's less emphasis on business districts in other parts of the city, but District 3 is actually home to quite a few business districts that are quite thriving. Hawthorne, Belmont, Woodstock, Foster. But those have experienced some of the same challenges that downtown has as well, maybe not to the same extent, but these are a lot of small business owners that have also struggled to come back from the pandemic. How are you guys thinking about helping those areas and those business owners really sort of bring those areas back to life? Councilor Koyama, I'll start with you.
And your question is about downtown or just district?
No, not downtown.
But district?
Yes.
District focused. Yeah, I love that question because it is always a downtown focus, which is important and we need to talk about it, but I do think that That's correct. That oftentimes then we forget talking about the businesses that are here in District 3. I'll say that I know a lot of the owners of small businesses because when you teach for 16 years, turns out like you teach everyone's kids. So I find it to be really important to be connecting with businesses and letting them know that I'm here, that I'm available, that I work for them. So I was recently invited to the Woodstock Community Business Association meeting, and they have a big annual potluck, and it was great to be able to connect with folks and let them know that I am their representative. And like we want them to feel like they can have their small businesses here. So I think a piece is making sure that they know that they're also part of being my constituents. And I'm like slowly building a spreadsheet of a lot of different contact information of different small businesses throughout District 3. So I think oftentimes in life, in politics, we can think in like one or the other or black and white when really like things are more complicated than that. And so to make sure that, like saying that I'm pro small business is not like a bad thing or doesn't mean I don't care. I'm not also a champion for the working class. Like I can be both of those, I believe. And we can think about things that uplift our community.
I think I'm going to press on this question just a little bit more because I think there's a lot of businesses, both big and small, but especially small businesses that say it is just untenable for us to stay in Portland for a number of reasons. Whether that's safety, whether that's they're just not getting enough foot traffic, whether that's, they're not making their margins work. What are specific things that you believe the city is not offering small businesses right now that it could be offering in the next months that could really make the difference?
Well, I know something that the city was offering but ran out of funds for was the program to pay for when your windows get broken. And so I do think that programs like that are important. I have a dance class that I go to in district and their windows got smashed and I shared with them how they could get some support from the city, but that fund is gone right now. So thinking about ways that we can actually be directly supporting our small business owners, because something like a smashed window or one break-in can be really hard for folks that are running a small business. Is that specific enough?
That's great, yes. So shifting a little bit to citywide questions, I mean, I think like the question of the next 4 months is how we're gonna write a balanced budget. We have a $100 million budget deficit right now, and I think cities all over the country always say that they're in a budget crisis and then somehow they're like, not really. This one's real. This one's really real. And we're not going to get out of this one by just plugging little holes here and there. I mean, this is a huge deficit. And I know that councilors have been asked to send sort of their cut preferences or where they want the administration to look for cuts to City Administrator Mike Jordan and Mayor Keith Wilson. I'm curious if each of you could share just one or two places where you have asked the administration, hey, I think we should look at this area for potential cuts. Councilor Morillo, let's start with you.
Yeah, thank you for this question. It is, Sophie is absolutely correct. We are in a really tough budget season, and actually Councilor Novick and Koyama Lane and I have discussed hosting a town hall to kind of have this hard discussion in district about more specifics for the district. I think that there are going to have to be huge cuts. I think that we're going to have to look at cutting from the top, ideally, as far as management goes in some spaces, because we have a lot of city employees. This is really heavy for me to say. I don't feel happy about this, but I think that we have a lot of city employees that do that direct line of work with community that we can't afford to cut. And so sometimes we're going to have to figure out how to cut from the top. I think there is a very real, possibility that we are going to have to do big cuts to parks. There is so much deferred maintenance in parks and in the Portland Bureau of Transportation, and we're going to have to figure out some alternative funding revenue, but that is not going to kick in anytime soon. And I think some of those cuts that have to happen will probably be delayed, as far as you're not going to see the impacts of it for a few months until these facilities start deteriorating. And I say all of that with a really, really heavy heart.
So I am curious, because I actually don't know the answer to this, but I assume you guys do. If we're looking to cut parks, would it be cutting services or more closing down specific parks or pools?
We actually, Oddly, in our committee structure, responsibility for parks has been divided between Councilor Mitch Green's committee that deals with recreation programs and Councilor Murillo's and I committee that oversees parks qua parks. And we actually asked the head of parks recently, what would it mean to close down a park? How much does each park cost? And she said, well, actually closing down a park isn't what the first thing that she would do. It'd be a matter of do you decide that you're not going to replace the lights that are going out? Do you decide that you're not going to, mow the grass, et cetera? So I think that, probably we'll be looking at specific program offerings in recreation, but also asking questions about, I think that we might have to make decisions about not shutting down parks now, but sort of deciding, well, are there some parks where we know that we probably will never be able to keep up removing the invasive plants? So can we tell people that we're not removing the invasive plants in this park anymore, so the park is going to look significantly different in another 10 years? And actually, Councilor Maria and I are going to have the Parks Bureau in our committee in a couple of weeks to sort of go over the options and make sure we have a good understanding of where the money goes, what cuts can be made to things that can be brought back, and what cuts are, if you make them, then you're basically consigning a chunk of the park system to oblivion.
Councilor Novick, you had mentioned that cuts are probably going to also happen at fire and police. Can you speak to that?
Well, basically the four big things are police, fire, parks, and housing homelessness stuff. One option you could take is say, well, homelessness is really the county's priority. We've been stepping up. We can't afford it anymore. We'll leave that all to the county. But the county is now saying we don't have any money either. We have $100 million less. We need to keep on doing homeless services. So, that's hard. Fire is hard because I actually had the Fire Bureau 10 years ago for a brief time, and we have 31 fire stations. And if you cut a fire station or cut a shift in one of those stations, then you're basically saying to people in that neighborhood, if your house catches fire or burns to the ground. That's maybe a little dramatic, but I think it's more or less true. So there are some places in town where they get very few calls. So you could say, if you're making widgets, let's shut down that station. But then you're saying if there is a fire in that neighborhood, you're out of luck. As far as police are concerned, there's parts of the police that I think are wildly understaffed. We basically have hardly any staff to investigate burglaries anymore. But they will also tell you that they're hard on patrol. We actually had them in the Public Safety Committee today, and we're sort of asking, tell us how much time your officers spend on calls of varying levels of priority. And we can say, well, if you cut out priority calls 8 and 9, here's how much you would save. Maybe you wouldn't save very much because they don't spend much time on priority calls 8 and 9. But those are the kind of conversations that we need to be having.
Councilor Koyama, I'm going to ask you this next question because Councilor Novick mentioned the budget issue at Multnomah County. So on Friday, Multnomah County said that the Joint Office of Homeless Services is facing a $104 million budget shortfall. And that is despite getting quite a bit of money to the tune of, I think, $150 million last year from the Supportive Housing Services tax. There's a number of reasons why the county is saying it's in this financial position looking at this deficit. They say if all of these cuts come to fruition, that they will need to cut about 25% of their current homelessness services, including 220 shelter beds and 2 adult shelters. I think this news came as a shock to a lot of people. The county is asking for money from the state. It's asking for money from Metro. Councilor Koyama, I'm curious, in light of this news, do you think it's as simple as Multnomah County asking for funding from the state and from Metro, or do you think a deeper sort of excavation of what is happening at the joint office and how it's currently using those tax dollars is needed? What do you think is the balance there?
Great question. I think a lot of people are asking the same question. I also found out pretty much when everyone else found out on Friday, just a little bit before, about what was coming out of the county. One piece that I know to be true is that a lot of constituents are frustrated, feeling like these different bodies that you all mentioned are pulling in different directions. So we have to make sure that I already am hearing from folks that it's feeling better. Is Commissioner Brim Edwards still here? I saw her here earlier. But we have been doing, I'll speak for myself. I've been working hard to make sure that I'm having a lot of conversations, that I'm coming to the table with the county commissioners, Julie Brim Edwards is my commissioner, with folks at Metro, to make sure that it doesn't, I think the average constituent, maybe you all are a little bit more engaged with the average constituent, but I feel like the average constituent is like, I don't really care who's in charge here. Like, government is government. You guys kind of need to like pull in the same direction and figure this out. So in terms of like, do we need to do a deeper dive into auditing how the county is spending money? I would say in general, I'm here for transparency. So you might have seen, if you're following our city council, that we're pushing to ask more questions and say, actually, you need to like show us what you're doing with this money here. If that makes sense, I would support that. It's no secret that our current mayor really, really cares about focusing on homelessness and making sure that we're serving folks who are living outside. So I know he is spending every day to try to make these different groups pitch in. Yeah, I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, in a sense, yes. I mean, this is a huge question, right? Like, no one can truly answer this question. I mean, but I do want to ask the question a little bit differently. In light of Friday's news, what is one question you have for Multnomah County or the Joint Office of Homeless Services that this has brought up for you? Councilor Morillo, let's start with you.
I think the biggest question for me upon hearing that news, and I heard it a little bit before the news broke, but was really, how long have you known about this? I think I was curious about when they had known about this, because we're partnering on a lot of big issues together, dealing with the new shelter systems that are being put together. And so I think in order to truly be good and effective partners together, we need to have all of the information up front about our finances at the city, our finances at the county, so that we can make those decisions together. So I think that what I would like to see moving forward is a bigger leeway and more time to figure those things out together. I also don't want to scare the audience further, but the federal issues are going to impact us locally. The reality is that the federal government is already doing cuts to HUD and to other homeless services. We're probably going to get funding taken away for big projects like the Rose Quarter. So us being able to collaborate up front openly is going to be absolutely critical at this time. And that's a question that I would have, and an expectation that I have moving forward as well.
Great, thank you. Councilor Novick, one quick question you have for the Joint Office.
The basic question for Multnomah County is, they agreed that they were going to take over the city-run tiny house village sites, take over operating them. And the question is, are they still going to do that?
Nice. Can I say one more thing?
Yes.
So tomorrow there's going to be a joint work session that you can stream into with city councilors and folks from the county. And I think in those spaces, we need to be really asking some of these questions and making sure that we're having the conversations in public in front of you all. So I encourage you to tune in.
Great. So we're gonna shift to a question about taxes. So Governor Tina Kotek, her Central City Task Force, which is a group she convened basically to try to address the issues going on in downtown and how to bring the part of that city back. They recently came out with a report entitled, it's very long and very boring, 19 Facts About Economic, Fiscal, and Service Conditions in Portland, Oregon. The top line findings of that report are that Portlanders are really feeling overtaxed. And it actually is contributing to some sort of out-migration out of this city, and including small businesses that are just feeling like they cannot make their margins meet in this city for a variety of reasons. On the other hand, we have a number of city bureaus that are in an existential budget crisis that's not going to get repaired in the next year. So the Portland Bureau of Transportation, the Parks Bureau, those bureaus both have really existential funding crises that, again, are not going to be remediated when we have just like a stronger fiscal year. We basically have to find new ways to fund those bureaus or just let them sort of fall to the wayside. So I'm curious how you sort of balance those two things of Portlanders feeling in general pretty overtaxed, and also we have services that it's not easy to find funding for, and it seems like normally you'd be like, yeah, we'd go out for a levy or we'd go out for a bond. So I'm curious how you guys are sort of thinking of that dichotomy, and when I think about it, it feels a little hopeless, but I know that's not the right way to think about it. So let's hear your guys' better ideas. Anyone can take that one.
Such an easy question, Sophie. I think that we have to do a better job of showing people what their taxes are being used for, and this is something that Councilor Novick emphasizes a lot. I think that we don't do a good enough job of telling people what they're paying for, and that can be a problem long term. I also have very scary reports from PBOT where they're like, our streets are going to be gravel in like the next few decades if we don't change some funding revenue issues now. So I think that we're going to have to find ways to be creative and work with community in ways that we never have before. So when I'm thinking about parks, maybe not getting some of the services, not having the grass mown, not having some of the invasive plants taken out, is that something that we come together as neighbors and we do ourselves to make sure that this continues to function? And then we have city do other core services that can't be done by the community. I think that this is going to be a space, we are just in a historic time in so many horrible ways, where we have to all pitch in together in a way that we never have before. We're going to have people maybe open the spare room in their house to have their neighbor live there. You know, like, we are going to have to be creative and work together in ways that we never have before, and I believe that we can do that. And also, you know, I'm looking into some things. I'll speak for myself, because I don't want the governor to be mad at all of council. She can just be mad at me. I'm interested in what it would look like to maybe do like a street fee or something like that to maintain some of our streets. I'm interested in looking into it. I have not yet, so I would need to investigate that. But, you know, we do have some existential questions to answer here.
Thank you. Councilor Novick.
So I tend to think that people get upset about taxes when they, like, just as Councilor Morillo said, when they don't see the value they're getting from them. I think that if homelessness had disappeared from our streets in the past 2 years, people wouldn't be that upset about paying the homeless service tax. I think that if we had preschools for every child in Portland, people wouldn't be upset about paying the preschool tax. So I think that people's are more concerned about not seeing value than actually paying the taxes. I think that in this budget crisis, we do need to ask people and explain. I mean, I think one of the questions that should be asked is, do you want to cut police? Do you want to cut fire? Do you want to cut homeless services? Do you want to cut parks? Or do you rather see us raise revenue in some way? It's not like I have any particular revenue idea in mind, but I think that question has to be asked. And I think that, like the Portland Metro Chamber and the governor say we don't want any tax increases in Portland in the next 3 years. And I do kind of feel like asking them, okay, then what do you want us to cut? And it may be that there's an argument that raising taxes of any kind will make Portland totally so unattractive that people keep on leaving droves and nobody comes here. But I think you do have to ask what happens if we make the kind of cuts we're going to make otherwise. So again, I'm not proposing raising taxes or any particular tax, but I think that it needs to be part of the discussion.
I agree with my colleagues. I think we have to be creative. We have to think of a lot of different solutions here. I encourage you all in March next month, we're going to be doing some sort of a budget town hall. There'll be one in every district, and it is important that at these meetings, I'm pushing that there will be a chance for you all to actually, maybe like teacher style with a worksheet, like you get to actually try balancing a budget and give some real feedback. And I'll say, all of these different bureaus are coming before us and briefing us and telling us about the important work that they do. And then they all are saying, cuts are going to be so hard. I'll say one thing I can't stop thinking about is when someone from PBOT came and talked about the truck that fell into the sinkhole recently. Did anyone follow that?
No.
If you can look it up, it was found in
not
a
in
pipe, and them talking about this literally is the kind of stuff that could happen if we're not taking care of our roads. I think when a lot of these services are going well, you don't really notice them, but then when huge things like that happen, it shows you what happens when you're not maintaining the infrastructure.
This is a bit of like macabre humor, but I do feel like in all these work sessions, all the bureaus that are facing cuts are basically like giving their best go at the worst thing that could possibly happen. They're like fighting for who the worst thing has happened to. I think you guys have been like front row for that, but it's not been funny. It's just, it is like, it's a little bit of theater, which isn't a bad thing at all. I mean, they're all trying to prove a point. Anyways, this is going off on a tangent. Never mind. All right, next question. One thing I've spent a lot of time thinking about is sort of Portland's reputation, and it feels almost like a chicken and the egg situation, and I don't always know which came first. I think a lot of people don't think fondly of Portland right now that are not in the city. And I also think a lot of Portlanders don't necessarily think all that fondly of the city right now. They love it, but they're frustrated with it. And I think we all know that reputation as a city really matters for a lot of different reasons. And it feels like the tough way that we turn our reputation around is that we actually get things done. And I say tough because that can take a long time. That is not a quick fix. Are there smaller things that we can be doing, like about how we talk about our city? How about how you guys talk about your city, or just kind of more surface things that can be done that don't necessarily take hundreds of millions of dollars that you believe can help turn sort of our city's reputation around?
Yeah, I think we can have a city council that doesn't talk shit about our city 24/7. I mean, the last city council was actively campaigning by talking badly about our city to everyone and anyone who would listen. And if you repeat a lie enough times, it does become the truth. And I think that really scared people. It's 2025. People are still talking about protests that happened 5 years ago, like it's still a war zone down there. And there was a study I saw recently that showed that people who have really bad opinions of downtown Portland actually just haven't visited downtown. So they have an imaginary idea of what the city is like that is not reflective of what it's actually like in person. So I think our role as city councilors is to get the material wins for the city and for our constituents, and to be cheerleaders for this city because it is a great city.
Yeah.
Also, I'm sorry I cussed.
Can I give a goofy answer?
Yes.
So one idea I have, and you can tell me if it is really silly, is I was thinking, does anybody remember the Petula Clark song, Downtown, from the 1960s?
Can you sing it?
You don't want to hear me sing it. Downtown.
Worth a shot.
So I was thinking that maybe someday in the summer we could get a few hundred people together and get a parade permit and some boom boxes and just stroll through downtown singing that song as loud as we can. And I discovered that Petula Clark is actually still alive. She's like 91, but she lives in Switzerland for the skiing. So I was thinking if somebody could fly her out, maybe she could come and sing the song with us.
I love that. I love what both counselors here have said. I want to add on to what Councilor Morillo is saying about narrative is really powerful and storytelling is powerful. So if you let a certain story or narrative just continue, then that can have a lot of power. So I do think if you look at the counselors that were elected in this last election, you can really see a representation of a lot of hope and diversity. And there are 12 counselors that really are excited to work together and get things done. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have reached the time when we do live audience questions. If you have a question, please make your way to Sam Metz with the mic. So please, if you are asking a question, if there is a preamble to your question, please keep it less than 20 seconds, and your question must have a question mark at the end. It cannot be a statement. We'll have time for about 4 to 5. Councilor Koyama, thank her for coming out even though she's very sick. All right, go ahead.
While they're figuring this out, I'm just excited to see folks that I saw at a renters town hall last weekend here again.
Thank you, councilors, for coming out. I know in 2023, we had passed a downtown reinvigoration tax cut in order to try to get businesses back downtown. I know that because we're in a funding crisis, I was wondering if councilors had looked into any of those remaining large tax cuts that could be causing a hole in our budget. Thank you.
I actually don't know the ongoing cost of that particular tax cut. I think that the biggest hole in our budget, though, is simply that property values have not been rising and in some cases falling. So our property taxes are going down, and I think they'd be going down or not keeping up with costs, even if we had no tax cuts. I mean, we've been hearing for years about the vacancy, Portland leading the country in downtown business vacancies, and that's catching up with us.
So I know what you're referring to. It's technically not a tax-free zone for downtown businesses in the way that I had originally thought. I had asked questions about this. It's a tax credit that certain businesses were given to stay open, basically to survive the pandemic. So I think they each got $200,000 in a tax-free zone. And I think that anything and everything is not off the table right now. So I assume that would be looked at through the Arts and Economy Committee. And I'm interested in taking a look at literally anything we can do.
I want to find out, one of my frustrations with the last city council was trying to have communication with them. When you, except for Mingus Maps, you would contact them, you would write them, you would call them, and you would never have a response back. What will you be doing to improve that accessibility and communication? And will you be doing anything like a newsletter from each of you to us? Because I love when Representative Noss and Gamba from our district give us newsletters. We know what's going on. Thank
you. Big fans of newsletters in here. Yeah, my office has a newsletter. We've only sent one out so far because my poor chief of staff is my only staffer right now. We have hired a second staffer, and we're planning on hiring someone to specifically do constituent services. Part of the struggle that you're seeing right now in accessing us is that under the new form of government, we have a shared constituent services person per district, and they have to answer all of the calls and emails for the three of us, which also means that person can't necessarily represent our point of view in the way that your individual constituent services person could in the past. So that's why I'm hiring someone who's going to specifically help me with some of that and with writing the newsletters and getting that information out. And I don't know how many folks here like to be on social media. Something that I try to be pretty hands-on about is using Instagram and TikTok to make videos explaining the policies that I'm bringing forward and things that I want to do. I understand. I'm the youngest city councilor, guys. I'm going to use social media to engage in some ways, but I'll find ways to hyperlink my videos into the newsletters so that you can see them in different avenues.
I just wanted to say that we interviewed a guy for a possible job today. One of the things I told him is, if you're with us, one of your jobs will be to beat me up until I agree to sign off on newsletters and make sure that I'm sending them out regularly.
Hello. Turn it towards me. Thanks. I'm Albert Kaufman, and I live here in the neighborhood. And for 10 years, I have been living down the street from Division between Cesar Chavez and 50th. And I've watched as that street, even 10 years ago, was like a mine field, and now it's just worse. And then about 6 months ago, the folks who build crosswalks and do the curb cuts and all that came and sort of outlined what was going to come. Can you get to your question? Yes. And so there's a huge cost-cutting opportunity to please repair our roads and stop building so many of these ADA accessible crosswalks. They replaced ones that were not needing to be replaced, if you ask me. And they probably spent $3 or $4 million just recently on that one stretch of road. So that's a cost-cutting area that I'd like to see approached or addressed.
Okay, I'm not sure that was a question, but point taken. Recommendation, all right.
Okay, it take just a moment for me to get to my question, but I live in Montevilla. The city changed zoning in order to deal with the homeless crisis. So directly across the street from me, a church put in their desire homeless pods. Then the city and the county funded it. We have no mechanism that's legal to mitigate any problems. So the only thing that's available is a good neighbor agreement, which I helped work with the neighborhood association. Can you get to the question? Yeah. So my question is, currently, there's a guy that got kicked out. He was given some help. He got kicked out. He's living in his van. And my question is, what can you do to help me? Because the way everything is structured currently, the mechanism for making sure people don't camp outside of this homeless shelter, it doesn't exist. So what can you do to help me with this particular situation? And by extension, the rest of the neighbors who are dealing with all these shelters that are being put in Montevilla?
Well, we can make sure that, so you're complaining about the guy who was kicked out and is living in a van on the street? We can ask about it. I mean, one question, we were dealing with another question about somebody, people living in their vehicles, and as long as they're parked legally, I think that there's some issues with trying to move them. But also, I need to review the good neighbor agreement and see if there's nothing in there that addresses this. Can something be added? So the real answer is I don't know. But again, this is why we have district representation. And actually, my staff guy Spencer, who was with the Montevilla Neighborhood Association, is sitting right there. And please give him your name, number, and email, and we'll follow up.
Great, thank you.
My name is Liz Holland. I'm a victim of being hit by a car as a pedestrian. My question is, I live on 47th and Sandy Boulevard. I want to know what we can do to make these streets safer. This happened 5 years ago during the pandemic. I'm angered because it happens over and over and over. I have a flyer that you guys are familiar with from PBOT about people, victims of car accidents. And yeah, I'd already asked. I just want to know what we can do about fixing the streets and the traffic.
Thank you so much for your question. And I want to first start out by saying that I'm really sorry that happened to you. That should never happen in our streets. I have been almost hit by a car on Division, on Sandy, on Burnside, more times than I can count, wearing very bright clothes, and it's a real issue that we need to look into. I think particularly with Sandy Boulevard, something I ran on that I'm interested in pursuing despite the budget deficit is taking a look at how we can change Sandy to maybe add some bike lanes or rapid transit, which would probably slow traffic down by eliminating some of the car lanes. I think that there are ways that we can be transformative about how we use the physical space to slow cars down. And I think sometimes when there's just wide open visibility, it's really easy for people to think they can speed on ahead. And we need to change the physical landscape to make sure that they don't have the option to do that. So that's something I'm committed to looking into. And with the budget deficit, I'll be honest, I don't know when that would happen. But yeah, thank you for sharing your story. And I'm sorry that happened to you.
We've got time for one more question, but if you didn't get your question answered and you are in line, the counselors are going to stick around. So if you can find them in the crowd, pester them with your question. All right, last question.
Hi, thank you for being here, and thanks for your patience. This is my first time engaging with local politics.
Woo!
But in lieu of so much that is happening currently in the country, I wanted to see and I don't know a lot about city council either, but I wanted to understand better what was within your ability and what's within your purview in terms of advocating for the trans community in Portland. people are so frightened, and I am so frightened for my friends. And yeah, just wanted to come and advocate for my community.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy that you're here and that this is your first experience engaging in local government. I think that while the city of Portland has taken a few steps, we're a sanctuary city for immigration, and I also think that we have some things within our purview as far as like the reality is Portland might become a refugee state for a lot of our queer and trans friends from other states who are coming here seeking safety. And I think that means that we're going to have to be really intentional about the policies that we pass, the shelter spaces that we create, making sure that we're creating trans inclusive shelter spaces where people are safe if they move into Portland, and making sure that we're protecting people's rights at the local level.
We at City Club are rooting for your success, and we'll watch how you perform. And special thanks to Sophie. She's been just excellent moderator. And I want to thank our sponsors again. Thank our sponsors again. Is this on?
Yeah.
All right. The Standard, AARP Oregon, and the Fight Against Sex Trafficking for their sponsorship. And thanks for all of you for coming out tonight. Your support for these counselors is terrific, and I'm sure you'll hold their feet to the fire as they go through their session. Remember, we conclude our Meet the Counselors session a week from tonight at ERCO for the District 1 counselors, if you'd like to attend that. And finally, please consider becoming a City Club member. Or make a contribution for tonight's event if you'd enjoyed it. Go to pdxcityclub.org/membership, and I hope you'll take us up on that invitation. Now it's time for you to meet with the counselors if you'd like to stay and do that. And there are other City Club members around if you'd like to chat with us. Please do.